Today is section 133, verses 1 through 12. So the date is November 3rd, 1831 in Hiram, Ohio. It is for the church, and the prominent doctrine or theme is Appendix or Establishing Zion. Now, the section we read just yesterday was from 1843. So we've gone back in time, and in the podcast they explain that this section was given as an appendix to when they were doing the conference to put together the Book of Commandments. And section 1 happens at the same conference as the preface, and this comes as the appendix, but later on is given a section number. So the elders desired to know relative to preaching the gospel to the inhabitants of the earth and concerning the gathering, and in order to walk by the true light and be instructed from on high, I inquired of the Lord. That's Joseph Smith explaining the background behind this. Okay, so an overview of this section is the revelation is a proclamation to the church members to gather to Zion and was to be carried by elders to all the people of the world. The Lord commanded that Zion and Jerusalem were both to be established, and the voice of the Lord was to come from each of these gathering places. The lost tribes who would come from the north countries were also mentioned. At the second coming, the graves of the saints will be opened as they are resurrected. The circumstances of those who reject the Lord's message are also discussed. In addition, Christ speaks of events associated with his second coming, including the restoration of the gospel, which is to warn and prepare all men. The podcast this week is in 3 parts. I've only seen 2 so far, but the first part is has a lot of really interesting information about this section, so I recommend watching or listening to that. So it was just 12 verses to begin with, and I didn't find anything in my personal reading last night, but in verse 5 it says, "Go ye out from Babylon, be ye clean that bear the vessels of the Lord." They talk about this in the podcast. Now, if I could remember, I listened to this part on Saturday. I found it interesting. I can't remember it now. Can't remember what they say, but I do remember being fascinated by it. So I recommend watching the first half of the podcast. That's basically it for the background and what this is saying. The first 12 verses is just kind of amping up to the section, saying, "I am the Lord, I come quickly, prepare for the bridegroom," things of that nature. Here, "Go ye out from Babylon. The Lord commanded all saints, except those who were especially commanded to tarry for the preaching of the gospel and the warning of the nation, to gather to the land of Zion." They were to go out of Babylon. This term the Lord, in a number of revelations, and also in John's revelation, applied to the wicked world and the great and abominable church, which rules a large portion of the earth, and has made the nations drunken with her sins. Drunken with her sins. Now, if that doesn't sound like today, I don't know what does. I think that should be it for today. Like I said, not too much in these verses, just talks about call your solemn assemblies, get ye out of Babylon, the bridegroom cometh, watch, therefore you know neither the day nor the hour. I really recommend watching the first episode of the podcast. They talk about Babylon and give some really interesting historical information about actual Babylon, not the metaphorical wicked world Babylon, but the actual Babylon. Okay, so that's all I have for today. That's D&C 133 verses 1 through 12, and tomorrow is 13 through 25. See you tomorrow.